G'day, welcome to the Belvedere Farm YouTube channel. I'm Nick, this is Dusty, my adoring audience of one, and I'm going to start my first video today by talking about the CFMoto CForce400. We bought this thing a couple of months ago, just before Christmas, and when we bought it, we found it really difficult to find info and good reviews on it. I'm not suggesting this will be the best review of a motor vehicle that you'll ever see, but I did want to put some info out there from the perspective of someone who uses it every day on the farm for people who might be thinking about buying one. So come along for the ride. I think the bit where I said come along for a ride was a bit overcooked, but I've filmed it now and I'm not going back. So look, CForce400 is one of the only quad bikes on the market that complies with the rollover legislation that's come in recently, which means it's one of the only new quad bikes you can actually buy. The Honda, Kawasaki, all of those big players have withdrawn from the market. So you're kind of left with these budget brands that a lot of folks, including us, just wouldn't have contemplated 5 years ago, I guess. So look, the CForce400's 400cc, like it says in the name, 30 horsepower, which is, you know, not what the power that the 400cc Hondas and the like were making, but is plenty of power as far as I'm concerned. We'll go into that in a bit more detail later. It's four-wheel drive, automatic, high range, low range, electric start, fuel injection. It is quite well equipped. I'll take you for a walk around the machine in a minute. But look, the question that was on my lips that no one could answer is, like, are these things any good? Are they reliable? I used to write a bit for a couple of bike and car magazines about 10, 15 years ago. I remember when CForce motorcycles were first imported into Australia, and personal opinion, they were kind of junk. You would see commuter bikes, those 250cc CForce commuter bikes parked in town when I was working in the Brisbane CBD at the time, and 3-month-old bikes would have rusty fasteners and fading pie sticks and generally just looked like arse. But, you know, that was a long time ago, and we know that some of these budget brands of tools, of cars, of, you know, all sorts of things are becoming real powerhouses. So I thought it was worth a look. We were honestly a bit caught in terms of buying a bike. We went looking for a second-hand Honda four-wheel drive quad bike, and found that because of the law change, because you could no longer buy a quad bike from Honda new at the end of last year, the price of second-hand quad bikes had just accelerated out of control. And you know, people were paying similar money to what we paid for this brand new quad bike, this brand new CForce, for 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old Hondas and Suzukis, and you know, we just couldn't pay that price. So we thought we'd give it a crack. I'll take you for a walk around the bike. I'll point out some things that I like about it. I'll point out some problems with it. This particular bike is just about to go in for its first service, so there'll be a list of things that I asked CForce to fix, the CFMoto dealer to fix, and yeah, let's go for a walk around it. All right, I found a nice lush bit of paddock to park it in. Let's go for a walk around. First thing you notice is the joystick on the back of it. So that's the rollover protection device. They're made locally, and they're a pretty good unit, I reckon. I was going to take it off, to be honest. Had to be on there when we bought it, obviously, but I decided I'd feel like a bit of a goose if one of us wore it as a hat, having taken off the rollover device, so we left it on. I have belted something with that, a very solid fixed object that I don't want to describe. And it does work. It stopped me from going over, and that did bend back and take the pressure. So, good news. Bike itself, first other thing you notice is it's replete with warning signs. So it's compliant in the US, no passengers, don't roll it over, mind the diff lock, doesn't comply with ADRs. Around here, still no passengers. Tyre pressure warning. Don't ride it if you're a kid. Read the manual. Don't carry a passenger. Don't drink and drive. Check the oil. So once you've got your OH&S induction out of the way, this is the bike. So look, gear shift is pretty standard these days. I would have loved a manual one, or at least one with gears to change, but typical automatic shift there. One thing I have noticed is it is very stiff to move it in and out of gears, and that's something I'm going to ask them to adjust. If it's on any type of angle, you can't take it out of park or reverse. So that, I think, is a fault with it, and I'll ask them to fix that. It's pretty well equipped. One thing I wasn't prepared for it to have is all of the indicator, brake light, tail light stuff. I actually reckon that's really useful. Like, you know, if I'm working with someone on the ground, I can indicate left to, you know, show them that I've seen a calf hiding over there or something, indicate right to let them know where I'm going. It's got good lights, particularly the high beams are quite good. A problem I've encountered, I bet it doesn't do it today, off, on low beam, lights don't work. Low beam lights don't always come on until you jiggle it a bit. No, even jiggled, I can only find high beams. So again, that's something I'll be asking CFMoto to fix. Something that they made a real meal of when I picked it up from the dealership was it's got stainless braided brake lines on it, and that's actually really good, I reckon. They cop a flogging. So that is actually a pretty good bit of equipment on these things. What I wasn't so stoked about is I just don't reckon it's pre-delivered that well. Like, regardless of how well CFMoto made it over in China, it came in a box, obviously partly disassembled. I don't know how disassembled they were when they arrived, but there's just loose screws on it. The bark busters that I was stoked it came with at no extra charge are just loose, and I just refuse to fix that. They can fix that when it goes in for its first service. And there's other fit and finish stuff. Like, it might seem really picky, right? But like, it is a brand new thing. This bit of plastic, that doesn't look like it's meant to be sitting that way. It looks like this front cover's meant to be under that shroud, but it's not, so who knows. Another good bit of equipment. It's got a pair of USB ports, or I should say one cigarette lighter charger and one double USB port. I haven't used that yet, but I reckon that actually would be really handy. The racks are an okay size. We use it for carrying baskets of eggs. I've taken the shoddy rack adapter that I made for it off just for this video, but I feel like I'd have a complaint about the rack basically no matter what it looked like. So that, I think, does the job. Comes with a factory fitted tow bar, which is pretty good. The tow rating is also pretty good, I reckon, for a quad bike. It's something like 300 kilos. Don't quote me on that. What else can I talk about? They're rated for like 170 kilos on board. I weigh about 115 all told. And these just seem flimsy to me. They're fine now, but I reckon in time they will really sag. The plastics otherwise seem like they're in pretty good nick. This is obviously filthy, but I think it's quite good quality plastic on these things. Paint finish was really good before it was filthy. I gave it a flogging into a gate recently and bent that just a tiny bit, but I was pretty impressed with how that held up. Factory fit tyres on it are pretty good, offer good traction in the mud. I have used them on road. I cannot recommend this thing on road, on tarmac. And I know they're not meant for that, but I found it an absolute death trap. It's got a top speed of a lot. It's got a top speed of well over 80 k's an hour. And it will not turn and it will not stop at that speed. So just be careful with yourselves out there. Pair of mirrors on it that are quite good, don't vibrate, really excellent. Obviously hand throttle. Linked brakes. So hand and foot stops quite well on dirt. Switchable 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. 4-wheel drive works great. And then once you're in 4-wheel drive, you can push that across and engage a diff locker. all obviously on a solenoid. And one thing I am really impressed with is when you're out doing something and you realise you've got into a spot where you really need diff locks or four-wheel drive, it switches in really quickly. You don't have to wait for a solenoid to do its thing for 30 seconds. It just locks in and goes. Dashboard's not so bad. This mainly lives inside, but obviously gets used in the rain. It's not doing it today, but I've noticed it fogs in wet weather. Like there's some water getting into there, which I think will be a longevity issue. A pet peeve of mine with it is that this friggin' clock doesn't keep time. Now, like if you're going to put a clock in something, make sure it keeps time, or don't have a clock. I know it seems like a minor inconvenience, but we use this for work. We are often operating to time frames, and it's just a friggin' annoyance, to be honest, on a brand new quad bike. As you see, we've done 121 Ks. It's got a fuel gauge. It's pretty good on fuel. It's like 45, 50 Ks to a tank. What else have we got here? Shows RPM. I'll start it in a second and show you that. Hour meter. We're just coming up for a 20-hour service. Voltage. Whatever that is. I guess I should read the manual. Oh, that's the brightness of the dash. Sick. I want that on 5. You'll see the little wheel icon. So that's two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, diff lock. So that's pretty good. And then obviously electric start. 1600 RPM idle. That's a bit of a look around it. I'm fascinated by what this blanking boss here might be up to. Maybe it's for ones with a second lever. No idea. Still wish those headlights had come on. Oh, there we go. Light, you just see it reflecting there. Low beam, high beam, low beam. No low beam now. Obviously, problem in that switch or in a relay. Anyway, let's go for a ride. So obviously that's a pretty steep hill. I've just gone up there and I feel like it handles it fine. You do have to be careful obviously with any quad bike about traversing a hill. And certainly I've put that in positions where I felt fairly uncomfortable, but you know, with the diff locker and in four-wheel drive, it does feel like a relatively stable quad bike. Another thing I've noticed riding it around, it does tend to get hot when it's left running stationary on a hot day, or is crawling around in the grass, moving cattle, things like that. doesn't overheat, but like the fans run a lot, and it goes right up on the temperature gauge. I don't know if that's normal. This is the only one I've ever ridden. I'll probably raise that with the dealer when I take it in for the service. So look, we'll head back to the garage, and I'll talk a little bit about the price and whether I recommend you buy one. Yeah, so what did it cost? Well, it was pretty bloody cheap. It was about $7,000 all told on the road. That, by way of comparison, is only a couple of $100 more than the 300cc two-wheel drive Kawasaki that we had ordered and paid a deposit on and got dicked around with the delivery date until past the legislation change date on which the dealer could supply it. So they're cheap. I had real reservations about buying it because I'm a premium motorcycle dude, premium tractor dude. I don't know if that counts. The Fiat's pretty shit, but I bought a new Kawasaki back in 2012. I like to buy good equipment when I can afford it. We couldn't really afford it on the farm here, but what I knew we couldn't afford was another shitty old quad bike that barely worked. So I felt between a bit of a rock and a hard place in terms of buying some busted old Honda that had been chasing chickens around for 5 years for about the same money as this brand new budget brand Chinese made quad. So I bought it. The reason I'm making this video, I had intended to start a YouTube channel, but I guess I hadn't intended my first video to be a quad bike review. But several people now have asked me about it because, we put photos of it on the Belvedere Farm Instagram and things like that. And people have asked, hey, are they any good? They're cheap enough. And I'd buy one, but know that you are not buying a Honda, basically. Everything's great. It's well equipped. It rides well. It's got heaps of power. It has been reliable so far, other than those teething issues that I've described in the video. What it doesn't have is that cockroach versus nuclear attack feel that Hondas have. It does not give me a strong sense that in 10 years' time it'll still be running just as it does today, which the Hondas do. And indeed, over on our lease block, we are riding a 20-year-old Honda Foreman, 4-tracks, whatever they're called in your market. And, it looks like it's been dropped off a cliff into a mud pit every day of its life for the last 25 years, and probably friggin' has. Everything's bent and broken, but it starts and runs absolutely just as well as it probably did in 1988 when it was made. And I don't get that feeling from this CFMoto, and that might be unfair to it. It might be unfair to their build quality if they've got a response, if CFMoto have got a response to this that, we've got these now that have been in the market for 5 years and they've got 10,000 hours on them and they've had no trouble. I'd love to hear that. If you've had trouble with yours, I'd love to hear it. I joined an owners group, both a Australian-based one on Facebook and a international one. People complain a lot about them and people break them a lot. But people are using them recreationally, going out mudding on the weekends, going rock climbing, jumping them, stuff like that. On the farm, I am not at least deliberately doing that stuff, but it is getting used hard, consistently, every single day. And I hope it lasts. So look, if you're looking at one of these, I would urge you to strongly consider it, but know what you're buying, basically. And be prepared to insist on the warranty, which is what I'm about to do. And you'll probably see a follow-up video after it's had its first service. And I've had a chat about some of these teething issues, which admittedly mostly are minor. But I bought a new bike and I expect it to be in reasonable quality. So I'm going to get it fixed. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It is my first. It is not going to be very fancy, but I hope you found it informative. Please please subscribe, please tell your friends. There'll be a lot more content coming about the way we farm here, the way we build community, the things that we are doing to look after the landscape and ourselves and each other. So I look forward to engaging with you a lot more soon. Thanks very much, everyone.